Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet Rayne. And today my guest is Denea. And I met her at Body, Mind, and Spirit Expo several months ago. And I don't know, there was just something about her that I was like, oh, we got to get you on the show. We got to get you in our fair. We got to. So I'm excited to be able to talk to her today and for her to share her story and journey and some of the things that she does. I feel like she's a new friend of mine. All of a sudden, I've kind of got connected. And she was right across from our booth at Body, Mind, and Spirit. So we really got to connect at the fair. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Share with us a little bit about your journey, because I know you do a ton of things, because I have your bio here. She's a multifaceted energy healer. She does intuitive reading. She's a medical intuitive. She does Akashic. She does karma. So the list goes on and on. She's very similar to me, that I don't think there's much that she doesn't do, which is really kind of cool because she has lots of tools. So I'm excited to talk to her today. But share your journey. What got you to doing what you do today? Have you always been connected, or did you open that up later on?
So I was definitely born with a lot of these gifts, but I think like a lot of us, we didn't always have that environment that we were raised in that really either understood or could support this. So I think for a long time, I thought it was just, I was weird, right? I was just super weird. So it wasn't until later in my life where I really started to embrace these things. And at that point, it was just a matter of fine tuning them and kind of seeing where my areas that I would excel and things that I really love to do, because I'm a clairvoyant psychic. So I dabble in a lot of different things, like you just mentioned, a long list of things. But my favorite things to do, Violet, is in the Akashic Records. So I do a lot of when I'm reading someone's energy, I'm reading the line of the soul, the timeline of the soul. Okay. So I'm tying in not just your now, but I'm tying in all the pieces from other yous and other lives that are affecting you now. Okay. So it's like a multifaceted process, but it helps people understand the bigger picture and why they create certain situations and relationships and health issues and all of these things. That's the biggest part of my work, right? Is helping people have this expansion and this different way to look at reality. And so we as human beings can move into this space where it's not just linear time, right? So we are multi-dimensional beings, and it's helping them connect those pieces, because I feel like a big part of society is making people feel like everything is random and meaningless and we're stuck here and nothing has purpose. And that's just so far from the truth. And if we could come back to the sacredness of life and creation and what it actually means to be a human being, then I feel like people would just have a much easier time and a much more enjoyable time being here and creating, right?
I love that. I love that. And, karma, lots of people have different viewpoints on karma. Some people believe that karma doesn't exist anymore. And some people believe that karma very much exists and that karma is really part of our journey and past. So share with our listeners what your definition of karma and how you see karma affecting us.
So karma, everyone has their own interpretation of karma, and we can call it cause and effect, right? So for people who don't like the term karma. We can call it cause and effect, meaning everything that we do sets something into motion, right? So even on a basic level, people who are planning a family, if they want to have children, they get pregnant, they have children, then those children grow up and do you know what I mean? There's this cause and effect of the decisions that we make, even little decisions, right? So maybe at a grocery store, we smiled at a stranger, and what we didn't know is that stranger was like on the verge of committing suicide or was having a really bad day. But that smile and that interaction and that personal acknowledgement was something that took them to a better place, right? So it could be looked at in that way. And I simplify it also because what people don't understand, even if what I see a lot in my work on a very basic level is a lot of people in relationships that are karmic or have been following them from lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, especially really abusive relationships, right? Because you're bringing in those self-worth lessons, the power struggles, right? You're bringing in all these different layers of interpretation of reality and the lessons. And if we don't get the lessons, Violet, if we don't get it, we just keep reincarnating and picking up where we left off. And oftentimes with the same people, just in different bodies and in different time. And this is what I really want people to understand. For example, even medically, I had a woman come see me who had really severe stomach pains in a specific spot. And even though she went to the doctors and she had tests run and she had blah, 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 right? No one could figure out what was wrong. When I went into her energy, I realized that the most recent last past life that she had, she was stabbed to death in this spot. Okay. So everything, with that being said, everything is stored in stone and bone. Okay. So the body and the subconscious mind remembers things that the conscious mind doesn't, right? So things can be triggered. It's called timeline triggering. So if you have an event, and I'll segue a minute. If you have an event, let's take COVID, for example. If you've lived in a time where you have seen mass deaths at one time, plagues, illness, disease, corruption, we've heard stories of kings of old who just treated people like garbage and just, weren't really prolific leaders, right? If you had lived in times like that, then situations in the now, like COVID, death, like disease, all this stuff would be incredibly triggering for you. You wouldn't understand, your conscious mind would think it's COVID, but there's a underlining layer where people wouldn't understand that actually that fear that's being triggered is memories from past lives or future lives, wherever it lays, right? But there's layers to this. So there's timeline triggering that's happening. And when there is timeline triggering happening and there is not a conscious being that can understand the layers of the depth to the situation, these people can be easily manipulated and controlled. Right? So there's all these different things happening, and the karma, this is why I want to bring this so much more mainstream, because if we understood the layers to ourselves, we would understand our lessons better. Maybe we would pick relationships better, people better, or we wouldn't stay in relationships, right? We would pick different careers. We would pick different places to live. I mean, this goes on and on and on and on, right? But if we understood the cause and effect of our decisions, how would we live our lives differently?
Totally differently, right? And I think about people that are in relationships that are difficult, wounding, painful, right? And like you, I go into the Akashic Records and they've had many lifetimes together. Most of us would think, if I had a really bad relationship with someone, I wouldn't go back and do it again with them. I wouldn't choose to continue that cycle. But on a soul, spiritual level, sometimes we get stuck in this energy loop that we can't seem to move out of until we make a conscious decision of, oh no, I want to resolve this, solve this in this lifetime, because I don't want to do this ever again. I want to do something else.
Yep.
I want to try something else. And I know you've probably seen those situations as well. in what you do.
Yeah. And even to give you another examples, I had another client come see me, and she was a mother, and she has several children, but one of her daughters specifically, they just were never able to have common ground. Okay. Everything was just stressful and resentment and anger and just all of this restriction of energy and movement in their relationship. And so when I went into her energy, I found out that in another life, she was a prison guard. She was a male prison guard, and she was incredibly, incredibly abusive to the inmates. Okay, so one of these inmates is now her daughter. And this is how this works. This is how this cycle of learning soul lessons works. It's not something like, in society, we have this YOLO movement, like you only live once. You know what I mean? It's just so silly and fabricated and ridiculous. And what we do in our creations as creators, right? Because we create everything that we experience, whether we realize it consciously or not, that is how this works. And she had created that dynamic for herself so that not to torture her or, to be mean in universal terms, but to create a healing on a soul level. Because when we create situations for ourselves, but also for other people, there is you could call it a universal law or whatever you want to say, chop it up to be karma, cause and effect. There is something that eventually comes back that it says, hey, you know what? You need to put yourself in the other shoe now. You need to really kind of reap what you've sown. Okay. Lay in your own bed so that you can understand on the other side the cause and effect of what you have set into motion. Because especially if you create trauma, right? Trauma, abuse, whether it's emotionally, mentally, verbally, physically, whatever it is, right? That doesn't just stop with that person, right? So we know we've all met people who have had issues. Everyone has issues, right? Everyone has their own stuff, their own suitcases, their own baggage. But like, it doesn't stop with that person, because when you create damage, right? When you create damage to someone, that ripples to other people. And then with that being said, if someone is being abused, okay, so then why is that person attracted that to themselves? What do they themselves need to learn? Do you know what I mean? So there's all these layers to this, and a tremendous amount of responsibility of the self that needs to happen when you start doing work like this. But it's so freeing, Violet, like, like it's liberating. It gives life just a whole new meaning and view, and it's just more enjoyable, and you create better and you live better and you feel better, and everything is it's just so much better, so much better.
It's really true. I've been teaching Akashic Records for several years now. And, what I tell students is you're going to come in and you have this perspective that I've never done any harm to anyone, that I've never hurt anyone, that I've never had a lifetime where I was destructive. And let's first get you into real perspective. We have all had lifetimes where we did awful things to people and to the planet and blah, 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 because it's about polarity. If you have never experienced darkness, negativity, violence, all that, you'll never really truly understand love and light and joy and all that, because you don't have a good perspective. And so we have this spectrum of lifetimes, and we're working through all of these experiences, all of these energies to really evolve and develop. We talk about spiritual evolution, but it's non-ending. I don't believe there's an end game here. I believe we continue to grow. We continue to work on stuff. We continue. If you think you know everything, as I tell my students, if you think you know everything, go step back again, because you know nothing. The master knows nothing. They know they're the fool, and there's so much out there to know that we cannot grasp it on a human level. So as you listen to this, I think about I don't know if you've ever read the book Neil Donald Walsh and the Angel, where he talks about the angels in heaven and comes to God and says, I want to go down in physical form and experience forgiveness. And God's like, why? Why do you want to experience forgiveness? Why? Well, I want to know what it feels like to forgive someone. And God's like, but you're in this perfect place. Like, there's perfection here. There's no sorrow. There's no sadness. Why would you choose that? Well, I really want to understand what forgiveness is all about. And then another angel steps up and says, I really love you. And if this is really what you want to do, I want to volunteer to be that person that you forgive. But when we step down into that physical life, please, please remember that I did this from love. Now, think about that. The people that have given you the most harm, the most wounds, what if they're the souls that love you the most and you've forgotten that they volunteered or they stepped up to be this individual to do this, right? And that'll blow your mind sometimes because you've forgotten what this contract was about or what this assignment was about. Because if you think about it, if you had somebody you really loved and they wanted to experience something, wouldn't you volunteer? Wouldn't you step up to help them do that? And wouldn't you do it out of love, knowing that they're going to forget when they get here, but they're going to remember when they go back home so that they don't get so hurt or so harmed that you're going to do to the length that they want this experience to be? I mean, when you think about that, it kind of blows your mind. And that really does happen. Really does happen where people on a soul group level step up to help you have a specific experience. And it's broader than we can sometimes wrap our mind around. Like, why would I have volunteered to have this? Why would I have chosen this parent? Why would I have chosen to come here at this time? Why would I have? Those questions are so much bigger than we can sometimes understand. But the records, by asking the question, you open the door for answers, wisdom, and healing. And it kind of steps through in that way. It's kind of really powerful how we can use that. And I'm sure you've seen that as well. People with their enemies or people that have really hurt them to know you've had many lifetimes. You guys are really close on the other side. Really?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to understand, right? We're here to experience certain things. And so when I talk to people about experience and I say, okay, you've created a plan, you have contracts, you've created all that. Then we have people go, so what is free will, free choice about if I've already created a plan? And I'm sure you've been asked that question as well. So what is your response to people that ask that question?
Well, okay, so I have a couple things. And it's not just, I also believe that when we're born, so we pick everything right. Before we incarnate, we pick our family, pick certain situations, and we have an idea of, we choose in detail enough that we have an idea on how our lives can go, not in just one way, but in multiple ways, right? And I also, part of this is the astrology of a specific soul. So I always say astrology reports are like the blueprint of the journey, the life journey. And you can follow that to a point that you can see, okay, at this point, here was certain things that maybe happened, and then you can go back to that time and see, yeah, actually X, Y, and Z did happen, right? So that's why I love astrology or numerology, because it just kind of connects things in a different way that people can actually rationalize, because you can tell them information, right? But having those tools can really help them, okay, because it gets very detailed, especially in specific relationships. If you've had, a problematic mother or addiction issue or whatever it is, this would be in your astrology report. We're just fine tuning the details as psychics and readers, and we're reading the energy more in depth. So I always say get an astrology report, because that kind of seals the deal if there's any doubt or questions. And we're talking about the divine plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a divine plan. If you're coming, like for me, for example, a lot of things in my life has been learning through relationships and learning about relationships and learning about people and different dynamics. Like, this is just something that has been a natural thing for me. And anytime that I have veered off the path or I have stayed in something too long, I always keep hitting these walls, right? So everyone has these times where like, God, I can't catch a break. Why do I keep hitting walls? Why can't I just progress? Blah, 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 blah. I feel like, yes, there's free will, but if there is a bigger plan, I feel like your team or guides or the plan, you will start being told without saying, hey, get your, you know what, together. But through experience, you'll keep meeting dead ends. Okay. And so that's how I interpret. All right, there's free will, but I mean, how much of this stress do I want to keep exercising on myself and not growing? What am I missing? What lesson am I missing here? So I think there's a lot of different ways that you could look at that and interpret that.
I love that. I love that explanation. I talk a lot about bump contracts, because we have bump contracts, and what that means is if you stray too far off path, if you go too far down the wrong road, you've given your divine team permission to bump you back on path, which can show up like a car accident, a health issue, losing your job, having to move across country. They can just show up in lots of ways. It's almost like the Tower card in tarot. It's like dramatic change because you're going the wrong way.
Totally.
And we're going to put you back on the right path. But I think we have choices along the way. We can choose certain things. I think it's part of that. You're going to take the short road or you're going to take the long road, right? And then I think there are people that have just stopped.
Yep.
And you know those people. They've just stopped living. They've stopped growing. They've stopped doing anything. I call it the zombie effect. They do the same thing every day. There's no change in what they're doing. And what those poor beings don't understand is it just means they get to come back and do it again.
Oh my God, that's what I tell people. I'm always like, you know, people who come to me with relationship issues and stuff, I'm like, listen, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you want to do this another 500 times? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's terrible.
Right? You know, you're going to get to come and do it again. Let's just clean all this up, move past this. Let's have some different experiences. Well, as you can tell, we could talk about the Akashic all day long because it is our passion project, right? But there's a lot of other things that you do as well. Energy healing, medical intuitive. Talk to us a little bit about what those tools are for you.
So the medical intuitive side is similar. I do it through the Akashic, but I also I'm able to scan the body and see if there's anything specifically going on in the body. When I say medical intuitive, I don't necessarily like to use the word medical, but it's just what most people resonate with. But it's really helping people understand outside of medical, right? So it's helping them understand how our thoughts and our emotions affect our body and then can affect the illness and disease and physical symptoms that we experience. And so for me, it is tying in a lot of times similar in what I mentioned before on people who go to the doctor all the time who have chronic issues or chronic pain or specific things in the body and they can't find anyone to help them or tests keep coming back normal. Usually that tells me that because there's a time and a place for everything, right? Like I believe in it all. It's all about balance and what you need in the moment. But a lot of times we don't talk enough about unresolved issues, especially emotionally, on how that breaks down the body, because people don't understand that, okay, if we experience a traumatic event, we could seek therapy and we could do whatever we need to do that we feel removes us from that situation to where we feel healed. But the body has a different experience. The body takes things and internalizes them in different ways. And oftentimes there's like an energetic something that will get stored somewhere in the body, whether it's in the organ, in the tissues, in the muscles, like wherever it lodges itself. And then, so if that is a traumatic experience, and if it's something that has been painful, and you can go on a list of many different emotions that it could be holding, right? So if you put that in an organ, and then that vibration of those emotions are radiating through those tissues, that starts to cause an issue. So what may be inflammation or stomach pain or digestive issues, or you could go on and on about this, but it's this lodged, unhealed trauma. Okay. And the body can only express itself in certain ways. So the body is going to start, hey, it hurts right here. And people are like, gosh, I'm having a hard time digesting my food. I'm getting sick often. I have heartburn. I have, whatever this is. And oftentimes it is an unhealed wound. And sometimes it can be an unhealed wound from another life, right? That is coming back to be healed, because there is a richness of the now. And there's all these techniques and all these people who are able to see things differently, to heal in different ways and more profound ways with the soul spirit, right? And so it's just about learning to locate where these stored energetic pieces are in the body and removing them, because you can remove them. They want to be removed. They don't want to be there, but there's an acknowledgement and a relationship that you need to have with your body. I always tell my clients, talk to your body, thank your body. You cannot be here without a body. Okay. And we all have, even us, we have not always been super aware, and we've done some crazy stuff. And we need to give gratitude for the body really taking on a lot of our experiences in its own way, and then allowing it to have its process and releasing these experiences, right? So it's not being held so tightly in the physical, emotional, mental, right? And creating energetic blocks, because that's what it does. And it can create illness and disease. So that is the medical intuitive side about what I do, and helping people, and even giving them, I often give them like supplement protocols or things that the body tells me it needs. Okay. So I'm not just scanning the body for the stored traumas and the energies and blah, 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 blah. And also generational wounds. Okay. So if someone was born into a family and maybe picked things up from mom in the womb or as a child, or like, I read all of this and see how it's affecting the body now. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So tell the listeners what all you offer as far as services and how they can find you. We'll have your website at the bottom of the video throughout, but share with us a little bit on how they can connect with you and some of the things that you offer.
Yeah, so my website is readingswithdenea, DENEA.com. And that has my social media and everything on there. That's the easiest way to book an appointment. I am a clairvoyant psychic. So obviously everyone knows I work a lot in the Akashic Records. I do Akashic Records. I do the medical intuitive. I do pet and animal communication. I do like just a wide range of things. I'm like having a hard time pinpointing everything after all that. I do a lot of different things, pretty much any energy, deceased loved ones. I don't always market that, but if they want to come through, I can read that energy. They don't always want to come through though. So I don't always market it like that, but, any energy or any situation that you're either going through or whatever it is, I can read and we can go into and we can better. Right. So, the website is the easiest way for me to get in contact with me and book an appointment.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for taking the time today to chat with me. I was so excited to get to chat with you. So
Me too.
we'll have to have you on here again and just go. You have so many things that we could talk about, right? We could
Yeah,
probably have 10 podcasts together and just chat. So we may
totally.
have to do another one in the future so that we can talk a little bit more on other topics. So it's been a lot of fun today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I definitely look forward to being invited back on the show and spending more time with you. I would definitely look forward to that.
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you for watching today. We hope that you'll subscribe to our channel. We're on many, many different platforms, everything from iHeartRadio to Apple to Spotify. You can find us out there, Sacred Magic Podcast. I hope you'll subscribe, and I hope I'll get to see you in person really soon. Have a magical day.
Are you seeking an online spiritual education resource? Do you crave to know more about various topics of spirituality? Discover Your Spiritual Gifts Academy offers a wide variety of programs including Crystal Alchemy, Tarot, The Journey of the Fool, Akashic Record Reading Certification, and much more. These online courses allow you to learn on your schedule and at your own pace. You can find out more at www.discoveryourspiritualgifts.academy. Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.